ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Town Assembly. As you know, the Town Assembly is your opportunity to tell us what you want to undertake on your behalf, and also to quiz us on the things we are doing at the moment. Well, tonight is a bit different because each of us is going to describe a piece of work that we have been all researching and could be implemented in Bollington over the next few years. Now, these items were identified in the neighbourhood plan as actions which Bollingtonians wish the Town Council to undertake. So we want you, the audience, to help us prioritise the programmes. We want your views so we know where to put our efforts. So the agenda, you've all got a copy, but that's what we will be talking on. And as you can see, 2 sessions, 5 minutes each presentation, 20-minute discussion at the end of each session, and a break at 8:25 or thereabouts for tea and coffee. The question and answer session will be chaired by the Deputy Mayor, John Stewart, who takes over from me in May. And we will be publishing a special issue of Bollingtonian, which will describe the meeting, and we'll also be posting on social media. One of the presentations we were going to give, would have been given tonight, was the work that's been done by Pip Griffiths and the Energy Group as part of Transition on the survey that a group of apolitical residents has been undertaking to understand how people want to move about Bollington now and in the future. It's rather long, and he's still working on it. It's going to be presented at the full council meeting in April, and that will inform our transport policy when we start to put that together. I'd also like to thank the people from Transition who are helping me at the moment write the climate emergency strategy. So final point before I hand over, a number of these projects are costly, and they will take a long time to come to fruition and will require significant increases in the parish precept. Others may be delivered relatively quickly and relatively cheaply. So I'd ask you to bear that in mind when making your choices tonight. So please enjoy the evening, and I'll now hand over to the first speaker.
Could you just mention at the bottom here, the bottom of that sheet?
Oh yes, the bottom of each sheet.
There we go.
There's a email address for you to send your feedback, questions and comments to us. So I shall now hand over to Councillor Kent.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Oh my goodness. I didn't start clapping before I heard what we've got to say. Well, good evening everybody, and welcome to our Town Assembly. One of the big challenges for Bollington is when we need to respond to the very serious threats of climate change the Mayor's referred to, is the expanding use of the private motor vehicle. Not only its use, but its storage and parking. And one answer to that challenge is to expand the use of public transport, and one way to do that is to introduce a local, eco-friendly community transport system. And that's what I've been asked to talk about. Our newly formed Transport and Highways Group, we have the chair, Joan Maitland over there, on Bollington Town Council has asked me to explore that possibility. This is an early proposal which will include extensive public discussion, hopefully starting tonight. Now, the community transport project I propose is simple. It is a modestly sized, eco-friendly minibus, and I'm hoping that my colleague, Town Clerk David, is putting up the things on the screen there. Yeah, there we are. Good. And there will be a picture of the Renault bus, which is not eco-friendly, taken over by Bollington for this presentation. Travelling around the town on a regular basis from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m, with maybe a couple of diversions into Macclesfield Station. It'll link in with any commercial bus service that remains. I hope, by the way, you can all hear me, even if I'm not quite near the mic. The drivers will be trained volunteers, and the fare will be fixed per head, something about £2, not according to distance travelled, so all can use it equitably for whatever reason they wish. It will have costs, of course, capital costs for the minibus, running costs, insurance, fuel, storage, maintenance and repairs, etc. Volunteers' expenses and management costs. And these will be financed by a combination of capital grants, fair income and a subsidy from us residents as precept payers. How much is unknown as yet, that's work to be done, but I would hope 40p per week from each household living in an average property would cover the expense. Where will it go, this bus? Will it come near me? How many times per day will it come? In detail, these are questions still to be answered. But I have drafted an initial route from the Turner's Arms to beyond the Cock and Pheasant and back that I hope will reach parts of Bollington that have never seen public transport before. The route, it's over 5 miles long, between 5.5 and 6. Takes about 25 minutes to drive at under 20 miles an hour, and with stopping and picking up and putting down passengers, should take about an hour. So, if our volunteers do 4 shifts per day, you should see the bus 16 times a day. If that is not community connectivity for residents of Bollington, I don't know what is. The route is on the screen, shortly to be followed by a list of streets. What are the advantages? Well, I hope they're obvious. Everyone who can get on a bus safely can get everywhere in Bollington at virtually any time, which means there's access to community facilities, shops, bars, restaurants for everyone in the town, fair accessibility for all, including children and the elderly, where I'm on my way. Therefore, business activity, and particularly social activity, will be encouraged. Social isolation will be less of a challenge. Our carbon emissions would drop, elderly people would not need to cling onto their cars for as long as we do, and there may even be less parking on our streets. But above all, residents of Bollington, we stand in a tradition where collectively in Bollington we would have met a clear need ourselves and taken responsibility for the local quality of our lives, for the good of all our residents. As they say in another place, I commend this proposition to the House. Thank you. There you are.
For those that don't know me, I'm Joanna Maitland, newish to the council. I have the task of chairing the Transport and Highways working group, and we've had some fantastic meetings already, actually. Bollington residents have been telling us their priorities, their concerns, and so we set up the working group to directly address those concerns and see what actual actions we can really add to them. First, the tasks on there were to assess the neighbourhood plan and the traffic surveys and pull all the information from that into a sort of sensible format for us to see where all the different issues are. We've also begun an exercise of reviewing and gathering data. You may have seen the SID machine moving around the town. It is gathering vehicle numbers, speed, and Mike Bollington is being amazing at turning that data into something that we can actually work with. We're also looking at accident rates. We're hoping to get some pollution figures. And to be honest, we're very lucky because we've got a number of experts right here in Bollington who are working with us on this sort of interesting project for Bollington. We're working with all the different organisations and individuals that can influence or are affected by the traffic in Bollington. We're in discussion with the schools, with businesses, with groups such as Transition, the Civic Society, etc., to try and gather a consensus on how we can move ahead. As you can probably expect, there are lots of opinions, and our meetings are long and detailed, but very, very interesting. Everybody has a different view as to how we can actually achieve what we want to achieve, which is essentially safety for all the road users through the town. So, hand in hand with this, it works very effectively with the fact that Bollington Town Council has declared a climate emergency. If we can slow down our town, then we can achieve our carbon neutrality from that perspective as well. One of the other things that we're looking at is electric vehicle charging points. There's work to be done with an unusual town like Bollington with lots of terraced houses on the streets. But we are considering all sorts of options, and there are companies that can help us to achieve that for the town. We are also examining how we can look at slowing the town down. We're looking at potential speed restrictions and all sorts of other safety measures. We actually spent our last meeting assessing a film that our town clerk had done for us, where we basically drove the length of the town and looked at all the safety issues and all the little pinch points and the places where people put their foot down and the places where there are incidents. And things that came out of that discussion were, could we paint slow signs in the road at various places? Can we use paint or actual physical structures to create safer roads, possibly sheltered parking areas? We also looked at flashing slow down signs. We've even considered a 20-mile-an-hour zone, and we're studying reports on those at the moment that work in other towns and villages. We'll be looking at walk to school schemes, the community bus, as Ken has explained. And our plan ahead now is really consult and report with residents on our progress. And we are going to have to budget, and we're going to have to look at what action we can achieve on behalf of Bollington and consider whether this needs a precept rise or whether we can achieve some of it within our existing budgets. I'm Alex Kane. I'm coming to the end of my first year as a councillor, which has been very interesting. And I think one of the things that I'm going to talk about is what we've done so far in terms of activities related to declared climate emergency. But I just want to highlight that several of the presentations that my fellow councillors will be given do link into that. The two previous presentations have already linked into the fact that the work that they're doing within the community is designed to address this very issue in part. So a little bit of history. In May last year, the Town Council declared a climate emergency, which was quite brave of it. It was not without a great deal of discussion, because that emergency declaration committed us to being, as a community, carbon neutral by 2030, which is quite a big ask, especially as we're at the lowest level, if you like, of local government, and a lot of our actions depend on what higher tiers of government are doing, whether it's Cheshire East Council, whether it's regionality issues, and indeed the national government itself. But we did declare a climate emergency, and we made a series of pledges within that emergency. The first was to be carbon neutral by 2030, not just in the production of carbon that we create in Bollington, but also our consumption, looking at what actually comes in and through the town in our own lives, in the lives of our industrial businesses and our small and medium enterprise businesses. The second part of our pledge was to call on Cheshire East Council, our parliamentary constituency, and Westminster to provide the power and resources to make that target possible. Like I said, we're at the lowest level, and I will come back when I explain what we've been doing and why we're now only just having a plan almost 12 months later, is that a lot of what we plan to do is somewhat dependent on decisions made higher up. Not just financial decisions, but actual decisions about action. We said we'd work with other councils and governments, and we've joined an organisation called the Covenant of Mayors, which is a European-based organisation of local councils, mayors representing those local councils, of both large and very small organisations and structures, government structures. They're sharing best practice and activities, projects, so that these can be admired, explored, furthered and adopted elsewhere throughout Europe. We said we'd work with partners across other towns in the region and to deliver our goal through relevant strategy and planning in cohesion with them. So for an example is that we might be part of Cheshire East, but we share a lot of our watershed with people in Whaley Bridge and New Mills and Buxton. So some of the issues that affect us from climate are out with the borough, if you like, and depend also on geographical and topographical situations. Another thing that we said we would do, that in all our discussions within council, all our decision-making procedures, we would ensure that the climate impact is considered and recorded. We're a bit hit and miss on it sometimes, I would say, in every discussion, but certainly within our planning decisions that we make, that discussion is very lively and robust, and I think is spreading out through the council. So I'm quite proud of that, actually, because it's an extra level to what is often quite a complicated discussion anyway. And then we said we'd report to council within 6 months, which meant November. And our report to council is we're actually not quite ready to fully report yet. But I'm very pleased to say if we stick down to here, then we will have a draft action plan which Roland has drafted as part of our emergency action group. So after that climate emergency, what we did was we went out and researched, both locally, regionally and nationally, attending a number of conferences, whether they were based on carbon budgets, whether they were based on remedial activity, retrofitting, all manner of things to draw information into what would be useful and relevant for our community. And one of the things that came out of that research was, like Jo has referred to in her presentation, we actually have a lot of experience, not just talent, but real solid experience, either academic, industrial, or community experience within this field and within our neighbourhood. So in August, we organised an event in this room, attended over 45 people, who had a variety of interests and experience, whether it was in transport, whether it was in retrofit, whether it was in education, engaging with communities, rewilding, whatever. And we brought those together in this group, in this room. And following that, we've taken a number of the key participants to form a specific working group. And that working group consists of key individuals, but also people from Transition Bollington, from the council, and we're drawing experience from elsewhere. Which means that, I think, Mr. Mayor, we will be presenting our draft initial action plan to council in April for their approval. But within that then comes what is the important stuff, that is the delivery of the timeframes for certain actions. So we may, for instance, have a target to reduce our carbon emissions on an annual basis, maybe somewhere between 10 and 15%. The next stage is to determine what we do with that, how we do that, and how we engage with everybody in the community, whether it's through social media, whether it's workshops, whether it is more questionnaires, whether it is working groups to see how we can deliver what we set to achieve. It is a work in progress. I'm really proud of what we've achieved so far. We're one of the smallest councils in the country to declare a climate emergency and actually try and do something about it. Most of the councils that have declared are the ones that have got, although limited money, but they have got some clout. And we want to be part of that discussion. We want to push upwards as well our debate. Thank you.
Right, this is going to be a quick one, this one. Christmas lights, how hard can it get? It's still easy. Well, you've only got to drill holes in lampposts, and Cheshire's don't like that. You've got to nick the electricity off Northern Power, and they don't like that. You've got to pick the right colour, you've got to put them, if you put them near a bedroom window, you've got to turn them off early, because, we'll leave them on till midnight. And also, we've got a main road of a length of, well, it's a long way, isn't it? And there's about 60 lampposts there, and every lamppost costs 200 quid to put the connector on, and the actual motif itself costs £300, so you can work it out yourself. Currently, we've got obviously Palmerston Street's done. We recently, last year or this year, we did down by the retail area of Grimshaw Lane. So we're really asking you what you want to see next, because we can't do the whole length of the road. We have some money in the budget. We've got 3 Christmas trees, as you know, and they've got coloured lights on, but now the trend is the white lights. But there you go, so we'll have to work that one out. They have moved to LEDs. But at the bottom of every slide is the feedback, Bollington TC. We're recording this meeting, there'll be questions later. And please tell me what you'd like to see, where you'd like to see the lights, and let's see what we can do, whether they are strings of lights or festoons, or whether they are the motifs that go on the lampposts. Nobody ever said anything about the ones we put in Grimshaw Lane, so I don't want anybody noticed, but I liked them anyway. But we can buy different ones. If we start straying into white with a bit of colour, some people don't like that, but Bollington got some really nice ones actually. So if you go into Waitrose or whatever in Bollington, have a look at those. Well, you won't see them now, will you? Anyway, I don't want to go into that, but feedback is what we need, because I could make decisions, I could ask the council, I could suggest to them, and then somebody says to me, why have you put them there? Why haven't we done Turner's down by Turner's Arms? And if you want any more Christmas trees, we have to get on the right height, as you know, because bonsai ones are not. So there you go. I'm off now.
Thank you, David. And thank you, Alex, as well. Yes, I've just taken a moment to pay tribute to Alex, because it's been a fun year we've had, and I've enjoyed every second of it. Look forward to more of that. You've probably picked out the theme tonight. It's resilience, and resilience is all sorts of interesting things. It's the environment, it's caring the community, it's how you engage with school, but it's also fitness. And one of the things that we're particularly interested in doing this year, if we can, is to set up an outdoor fitness trail in Bollington. Now, Bollington's got plenty of fitness activities. We've got a very, very good Bollington Health and Leisure, very good football pitches. But this would be something that would give us greater accessibility to the community. And the concept here is to set up a trail using either the relatively expensive equipment that you see on the left of the slide, or the relatively inexpensive equipment that you see on the right, and to run this trail from Grimshaw Lane along the Middlewood Way, and you'll find out when I talk about the lighting in a minute why this is quite interesting, and down to the recreation ground. And plenty of places have got this, and there's no reason why Bollington shouldn't have one. This is something that can be used on an ad hoc basis. People who want to use it won't need to go to the gym. It'll be there to use. Kids can use it coming home from school. Even people like myself can use it. It's an integral part of the fitness of our community, and it's one reason I believe why we need this type of equipment that is simple and gives access to all. So have a think about that one. And again, there's the feedback, and there's the route. You'll be seeing that photograph of the Middlewood Way again after the break, when I start talking about writing. Okay, next up is James.
Thank you very much. My name is James Nicholas, and I can't believe that I'm going to be talking about floral displays. I am. I don't know about you, but driving through villages around Cheshire, over the last few years, you see they've been putting up flowers and flower pots and everything, and I think it's not only colourful, it's also really smart. And it makes a statement about the area you're actually driving through. Just yesterday, I was driving through all the edge, Moberley, Knutsford, and everywhere, daffodils, absolutely fantastic, even though yesterday was absolutely chucking it down. But with these daffodils, crocuses, we were discussing whether it's croci or crocuses, it's crocuses, and snowdrops, it puts everybody in a good mood, and it's a sure sign that summer is just around the corner. So I know it's too late this year to be putting daffodils or those kind of things, but we could be planting them later on at the end of this year for next year. But I think, unfortunately, Bollington is being left behind in all this, and we're actually not and I think it's time to actually step up to the plate. And although I do appreciate there are small areas around Bollington where there are flowers growing and everything, and I think it looks absolutely fantastic. And I appreciate there are moves to be growing vegetables and plants, trees, and I know outside here there's gooseberries growing, numerous herbs, absolutely fantastic. And I think this should be a separate item, purely intended to be more visual to enhance Bollington. But we do need permissions from Cheshire East Council and Cheshire East Highways. So there are issues such as whether we can put these things on railings because they're actually quite heavy, and so there are lots of and line of sight for drivers and everything. So mowing and stuff. So all these things have to be sorted out. But on the whole, these organisations are being quite supportive. And we do have a sum of money from Bollington Town Council to get this work started. So we'll probably start with some summer planting for now, with a view to have maybe some winter planting as well in the future. But obviously this would have additional cost implications. So we would start small and focus on certain as yet unconfirmed areas, although we would concentrate on the main thoroughfare. So, and to minimise maintenance, we will be looking to have self-watering containers. But although I would ask that if anyone wants to volunteer to help deadhead and all these plants, that would help. That help would be extremely welcome. Thank you very much.